Welcome to Courage in the Darkness with your host, Phillip Roberts. It's time to awaken America, y'all. Let's get into it.
I am so ticked off right now. I'm usually on top of the news, but I'm a little late to this party, and honestly, I wish that I hadn't seen the invitation at all. So, a couple weeks ago, I guess, a story broke that genuinely shook me, and that doesn't happen often. The news was that the Vatican Apostolic Library, a place that holds some of the most sacred, irreplaceable intellectual property of the church, has officially allowed a dedicated prayer space for visiting Muslim scholars, complete with a rug oriented toward Mecca. When I first read that, my immediate gut reaction was, no, this can't be a thing. Now, to understand why this isn't just an interesting news story for me, you need to understand my background. I was raised Catholic, did the whole thing, Catholic school, catechism, the works. I know that tradition intimately. But it wasn't until I was 16 when I started attending services at a Baptist church that I truly came to know Jesus Christ personally, was baptized, and understood what it means to be saved by grace through faith. Since then, I've been heavily involved in evangelical and non-denominational churches. I've recently started attending a Baptist church again by my home, and I study the Bible and the church history constantly. My faith is built on the clear, non-negotiable truth of Christ. And that's why this Vatican story is so upsetting. As Christians, we are absolutely commanded to be loving and hospitable to all people, strangers, neighbors, everyone. But there's a line we're not allowed to cross, and it's a huge one. We should never, ever, ever allow another religion that explicitly rejects the divinity of Christ to use our consecrated spaces for their official worship. When the church's leadership facilitates an act of worship that denies the Lord who saved us, they are, in my view, violating God's first law. The question we have to ask is simple. Where is the line between Christian courtesy and spiritual compromise? I'm going to break down why this is a theological emergency, not just a cultural one. It all comes back to the First Commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. The Vatican's defense, often rooted in documents from the Second Vatican Council, like the Nostra Aetate, essentially says that we're all children of Abraham, and Muslims adore the one merciful creator God. They treat this as a basis for dialogue, but here's the problem. The God we worship is the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ is the ultimate and complete revelation of God. The worship performed by Muslims 5 times a day is explicitly done in rejection of the Trinity and the Incarnation. Their profession of faith, the Shahada, is a monotheistic statement that cannot coexist with the core Trinitarian mystery of Christian faith. So, when the Catholic Church, whose entire spiritual life is centered on the Eucharist and the sacrifice of the Son of God, provides a dedicated official space within the sovereign territory of the Holy See for a worship that says Jesus is not God, it sends a terrifying message. It's not just polite. It looks like religious indifferentism. The idea that it doesn't really matter which God you pray to or which path you follow, as long as you're sincere. If that were true, why did God send his only Son to die for us? This act, whether they realize it or not, makes the Vatican look like it's prioritizing an easy worldly courtesy over the hard non-negotiable truth of the gospel. It's like allowing a rival flag to be officially hoisted over your capital. For Christians, the Great Commission is the mission statement: preach the gospel and make disciples of all nations. We are called to be witnesses. The church says dialogue is a tool for evangelization, a way to build a bridge. But what happens when the bridge building stops the conversation? The officials in the library tried to defend this, with one vice prefect calling the library a humanistic institution, almost secular, focusing on shared human knowledge. This right here is the heart of the confusion. The library is part of the papal household. It is the repository of documents that testify to Christian truth. It can never just be a secular building. The gesture is seen by many in the evangelical and non-denominational world as a massive failure of spiritual witness. It suggests that intellectual accommodation is more important than spiritual proclamation. Why risk compromising the message that only Christ saves for the sake of a few academics' convenience? In the past, scholars found other ways: quiet corner or the garden. Institutionalizing it with a dedicated permanent space it's a statement. Some people defending the Vatican bring up the idea of a court of Gentiles, a concept for a modern space of dialogue with sincere seekers. But these are highly educated Muslim scholars with a defined faith. This isn't dialogue with a seeker. This is facilitating a spiritual comfort of a faith that fundamentally rejects the incarnation, and in doing so in the home of the incarnation's primary witness. Now let's talk about the geopolitical and ethical angle, which is the massive reciprocity gap. Christian virtue is hospitality, yes, but wisdom also demands prudence. When the Vatican extends this profoundly symbolic courtesy on its own sacred ground, what is the response from the other side? The faithful around the world are asking, can a Christian set up a prayer room in the heart of Mecca? Can Christians openly build churches or preach the gospel in many of the world's most devout Islamic nations? The answer is an overwhelmingly and brutally hell no. Pardon my language. This isn't an equal exchange. It's a one-sided surrender. It signals that the church is willing to make deep symbolic compromises in its own spiritual core to accommodate a system that is often restrictive and sometimes violently hostile to Christians abroad. It's not just a nice thing to do, it's an act of spiritual unilateral disarmament. The cost isn't financial, it's the cost of clarity. When you give this kind of symbolic win, it creates deep-seated confusion and distress among the faithful, especially Christians persecuted in countries where this kind of reciprocal respect is total fantasy. They see their leadership giving away a piece of the spiritual kingdom for the sake of diplomacy. I come back to the spiritual foundation that saved me: the clarity of the gospel. The Vatican must be a fortress of Christian truth. The minute a space within its walls is officially set aside for the organized worship of a deity defined in opposition to the triune God, a spiritual line has been crossed. As Christians, our love and hospitality must be without limit. But our commitment to the First Commandment and the Lordship of Jesus Christ must be even stronger. We can welcome a guest. We can provide water and shelter. But we should not provide the altar for a foreign god on our territory. We are called to defend our identity, not with weapons, but with unwavering, crystal clear conviction. The unique, life-saving message of Christ should not be muffled by a gesture of cultural accommodation. The documents in that library are irreplaceable, but the conviction that only Christ saves is infinitely more valuable. That message is what's on the line here. What do y'all think? Did the Vatican show admirable love, or did they compromise on a critical point of the doctrine? Let me know your thoughts on this, guys, in either the comments, shoot me an email, or on the socials. And I'll see you next time.